All right, hey guys. This is the study guide for the test on September 17th, which is next Tuesday. Make sure that you're studying all of your notes, not just these. There will be some questions from previous tests and previous study guides on there. So let's get started. So this one picks up with the lost state of Franklin. If you remember, that was Tennessee's first attempt at statehood. It existed for about 5 years from 1784 to 1789, and John Sevier was the first and only governor of Franklin. It was named after Benjamin Franklin. You know, Benjamin Franklin was the guy with the key and the kite and supposedly got struck by lightning, and he discovered electricity. The second question is, why did Tennessee's first attempt at statehood fail? The reason that Franklin did not make it as a state was because it really did not have the support of North Carolina. It met all the requirements, and when it went to the vote, it had to have 9 of 13 states to vote for it, and it fell just short at having 7. So if it had North Carolina support in one other state, Tennessee probably wouldn't have been the 16th state. It might not even have been a state at all. We might be living in the state of Franklin right now. Where was the Southwest Territory? The Southwest Territory is called the territory south of the River Ohio. It's pretty much Kentucky and Tennessee. The top border of Kentucky is the Ohio River, and so everything south of it, so that includes a large portion of Tennessee and Kentucky. William Blount was the only governor of the Southwest Territory because quickly after it became a territory, Tennessee is going to become the 16th state. So that leads us right into the first question is, what steps did Tennessee take to become a state? Well, there was a series of steps that were required. The first one was they had to reach a population of 60,000 people. Once they met a population of 60,000 people, they could vote and say, hey, we want to be a state. After they're voted to be a state, a constitutional convention was called, and they had to create the state constitution. Now, the state constitution is just simply laws that govern and say how the government in that state is going to work. Then that constitution for the state of Tennessee is given to Congress. If Congress likes it, Congress gives its approval. Congress ended up giving its approval, and Tennessee became the 16th state on June 1st, 1796. John Sevier, always important Tennessee history. You got Sevierville, you got Sevier County. He was at the Battle of Kings Mountain. He was the first and only governor of Franklin. He is the first governor of the state of Tennessee. Now, the original capital is not Nashville like it is today. It is actually Knoxville, and it's moved back and forth. It's been to Knoxville, then to Nashville, then back to Knoxville, and then it actually was in Murfreesboro at one point. Murfreesboro is the center of the state, the closest city to the center of the state, and then it moved back to Nashville. Now, the next thing, how was Tennessee involved in the War of 1812? That's what we've been talking about this week. So before the war, you had not only tensions with the British, but we were having to deal with the Creek Indians down and around Tennessee. The Creeks, you had the White Sticks, which you really didn't talk about them, but they're the ones that were with the U.S., and then you had the ones that were with the British, the Red Sticks. That was Red Eagle and his group. So we talked about how the Red Sticks attacked Fort Mims in Mobile, Alabama, and killed 500 settlers. Now, these settlers weren't just men. They were men, women, and children. So then the Tennessee militia gets called in, and they're going to actually go on the attack, and they're going to go from place to place, wiping out the Indian towns. They burned down some of the houses. They killed men, women, and children right back. But the main battle we talked about was the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, and that was a year later or so, where the Tennessee Volunteers came and they fought the Red Sticks. They were in the bend of the Tallapoosa River in Alabama. It came to known as the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. So you got General Jackson and his soldiers with the Cherokee and some Creek. General Jackson then came from the front side of the horseshoe, the top side of the horseshoe, and started firing cannons at the wall that the Creeks had built, while the Cherokees and the Creeks snuck around behind and swam across the river and attacked from behind. The battle was not that long. It was about 5 hours. We talked about how 750 of the Red Sticks had died. And not only did 750 of the Red Sticks die, there were only about 50 of the militiamen who had died. This pretty much ended the Creek War. 22 to 23 million acres were given to the U.S. government because of that. Red Eagle kind of gave it up. And General Jackson's success got him promoted to Major General, and he came home a war hero. So General Jackson's war hero status is what's going to let him be elected the first president from the state of Tennessee. Now, the Tennessee Volunteers. This was a nickname given to Tennesseans who were always willing to volunteer their services in any worthy war. The first of these was with the Battle of Horseshoe Bend and the War of 1812 and the Battle of New Orleans. Tennessee, they asked for 1,500 soldiers. Tennessee ended up giving 2,500, and that's been a common denominator with Tennessee throughout the rest of the United States history, from the Mexican-American War to Civil War. Tennessee actually fielded armies on the north side and the south. We gave plenty of soldiers for World War I and World War II, and we continue to have that same trend that men and now women from Tennessee are willing to fight and volunteer for their state and for their country. Now, because of his actions in the War of 1812, Andrew Jackson is going to be elected president, and he is the first president from the great state of Tennessee. Now, as the first president of the great state of Tennessee, he's going to do a few things. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to buy and purchase this thing called the Jackson Purchase. That's land in West Tennessee and southwestern Kentucky. It's bought by Andrew Jackson, and I'm going to fix this spelling right here, from the Chickasaws, and it was good farmland. He actually paid them $20,000 for 15 years for a total of, or $20,000 a year for 15 years for a total of $300,000. This kind of set up what his next thing was, and that was the Indian Removal Act. This act was signed into law by Andrew Jackson, and it forced the Indians off their land and moved them out to Oklahoma. It was an act that it does just what it says. It removed the Indians. And it made a way for the federal government to move the Indians off their land at gunpoint. They pretty much had armies that moved the Indians off their land. Now, without the Jackson Purchase and without the Indian Removal Act, you have no Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears was the trail that the Indians actually took going out to Oklahoma. 20,000 went with him, with a third of the Indians dying on the way. There are stories an example of the stories that have been told are these Indians trying to cross the Ohio River, and the person who owns the ferry, that there's a boat that takes them across the river, normally charges 12 cents a person to go across. Well, for the Indians, they were charging $1 a person. That's 8 to 9 times the amount of money, and these Indians did not have it, so many of them waited on the side of the river trying to figure out what to do, and many of them froze to death. One of the things we said in class, and we made it a point to say, they left in late fall. They leave in late fall. That means they're traveling 1,000 miles on foot. It's going to be in the winter. And it's not going to be good. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. A third of them, so 6,000 to 7,000 of the Cherokees, the Chickasaws, the Choctaws, the Seminoles, the Creeks are going to die on the way. Now, they did have this one gentleman. His name was John Ross. He was a Cherokee chief who attempted to negotiate to get the Indians to stay on their land. He finally realized that this was no use, and he negotiated for them to travel in smaller groups so they were able to hunt and feed themselves. Now imagine you got 20,000 people. If you're traveling in herds of 2,000 to 3,000 people, you're making a lot of noise, you're leaving a lot of stuff behind, and you're running off all the animals. So he negotiated for them to travel in smaller groups so they'd be able to hunt and fish and make sure they could feed everyone. Now the Treaty of Echota, or Echota, however you would like to say it, is the treaty where Andrew Jackson agreed to give out land west of the Indians for them to move out there. This was kind of the building block for the Jackson Purchase. Then you had the Treaty of Echota. Then you had the Indian Removal Act, and finally the Trail of Tears. Without the Treaty of Echota and the Jackson Purchase, you probably don't have any of the rest. So good luck on our test next week. Please study, and